Hi, I'm John Stevenson. We're going to be looking at the death of Abner, 2 Samuel chapter 3. We begin in this chapter 3, verse 1. Now there was a long war between the house of Saul and the house of David, and David grew steadily stronger. That's sort of our key phrase. But the house of Saul grew weaker continually. So as the chapter starts off, we have the statement, there's a long war going on, David grows stronger, and then verses 2 through 5, we see sons being born, where verse 2, sons were born to David at Hebron, and then we have their names. His firstborn was Amnon by Ahinoam the Jezreelite. His second one was Caleb by Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. The third, Absalom, the son of, and now we begin to find other wives that he has. Maacah, daughter of Talmi, king of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, the son of Agith. And the fifth, Shephathaiah, the son of Abital. And the sixth, Ethraim, by David's wife Eglab. And these were born to David at Hebron. So we've got these various sons being born. That's going to be significant because later on we're going to see sons born when we get to chapter 5, but they'll be born to David in Jerusalem. And we'll see how this account and that will be in parallel. We come to verse 6, and it came about while there was war between the house of Saul and the house of David, that Abner was making himself stronger in the house of Saul. So we had long war. Again, there's long war. Before we had David grow stronger. Now Abner is the one who's growing stronger. And this is going to lead to a confrontation in verse 7. Now Saul had a concubine whose name was Rizpah, the daughter of Ahai. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Why have you gone into my father's concubine?" That was considered sort of a no-no. Because when you went in and took for yourself the concubine of a king, even if that king had died, what you're doing is you're taking those royal prerogatives upon yourself. And so it looks as though Abner is sort of setting himself up to be the next king. And Ishbosheth confronts him on it. And verse 8, Abner was very angry over the words of Ishbosheth. And he said, "Am I a dog's head that belongs to Judah? Today I showed kindness to the house of Saul, your father, to his brothers, to his friends, and have not delivered you into the hand of David. And yet today you charge me with a guilt concerning the woman." Well, he was sort of guilty. Now, I don't know what his motives are, but I know what it looked like. And so he says in verse 9, "May God do so to Abner, and more also, if, as the Lord has sworn to David, I do not accomplish this for him, to transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul to establish the throne of David over Israel and over Judah, from Dan even to Beersheba." When you talk about Dan to Beersheba, Dan is as far north as you can go and still be in Israel. Beersheba is as far south you can go and still be in Israel. And Abner is saying, "I'm going to give the kingdom to David." And Ishbosheth's response, verse 11, "And he could no longer answer Abner a word because he was afraid of him." So Abner has grown stronger, and this has brought things to a head. And now Abner is going to act on those words. So verse 12, "Then Abner sent messengers to David in his place, saying, 'Whose is the land? Make your covenant with me.'" He's not saying you have to negotiate with Ishbosheth. "Make your covenant with me, and behold, my hand shall be with you to bring all Israel over to you. I will give you Israel." And David responds, "Well, that's good. I'll make a covenant with you, but I demand one thing of you, namely, you shall not see my face unless you first bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come to see me." And now David agrees to talk to Abner, but he says, here's my condition. And it was my wife that had, I had won her. He's going to explain this in a second. Verse 14, David sent messengers to Ishbosheth. You see, Abner has gone around behind Ishbosheth's back. David won't do that. He actually does the honorable thing. He sends messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, "Give me my wife Michal, to whom I was betrothed, for 100 foreskins of the Philistines." What had happened, David had killed 100 Philistines to get the bridal price, the dowry price for this bride. He had done so and had paid the price. Verse 15, Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband, because she had been, when David had become a fugitive, his wife had been taken and given to some other man. And so Ishbosheth sent and took her from her husband from Paltiel, the son of Laish, but her husband went with her, weeping as he went, and followed her as far as Bahurim. And then Abner said to him, "Go, return." So he returned. Um, verse 17 now. Verse 17 now. Abner had consultation with the elders of Israel, saying, "In times past you were seeking for David to be the king over you. Now then, do it. For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant David I will save my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of all their enemies." Now you think, wait a second, if Abner and the Israelites knew that David was supposed to be the king that God had anointed, then why aren't you already following him? Why are you waiting until you can make your own deal? You see, you have to sort of wonder about Abner's motives here. Verse 19, Abner also spoke in the hearing of Benjamin, and in addition, Abner went to speak in the hearing of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel and to the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner's making it happen. Verse 20, then Abner and 20 men with him came to David at Hebron, and David made a feast for Abner and the men who were with him. So he's been negotiating with David, and everything's going good. Verse 22, now we see the problem. And behold, the servants of David and Joab, the problem is going to be Joab, and Joab came from a raid and brought much spoil with them, but Abner was not with David at Hebron. He'd already been, and now he had sent him away, and he'd gone in peace. When Joab and all the army that was with him arrived, they told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he sent him away, and he has gone in peace. And Joab's frankly upset. Verse 24, then Joab came to the king and said, "Why? What have you done? Behold, Abner came to you. Why then have you sent him away, and he's already gone? Why did you let him go? You know Abner the son of Ner, that he came to deceive you, and to learn of your going out and coming in, and to find out all that you were doing." In other words, Joab's accusing Abner of being dishonest. Now, I can't see Abner's heart, so I don't know. Is Joab calling it right? Is he calling it wrong? Remember that Joab, from the last chapter, has a bone to pick with Abner. Joab, there's a blood feud going on. Joab has not forgiven Abner for having killed Joab's younger brother. And so that's really what's at the heart of the matter. And now Joab is going to take things into his own hand. Verse 26, when Joab came out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, and they brought him back from the well of Sirah. But David didn't know it. So Joab is doing something without David's knowledge. Verse 27, so when Abner returned to Hebron, Joab took him aside into the middle of the gate to speak with him privately, and there he struck him in the belly, so that he died on account of the blood of Ashael, his brother. That was the brother that in the last chapter Abner had killed. Not that Abner had wanted to. Remember, it was in the midst of the battle, and Abner said, "Go chase somebody else," and Asahel wouldn't do that, and so now he had killed him. Joab is now getting even. Now I want you to see what's happening here, because history is, at least the story is, repeating itself. Back in the opening chapters of Samuel, we had the instance where an Amalekite had tried to curry favor with David by bringing news of Saul's death. And now we see Abner trying to curry favor with David by negotiating the delivery of the kingdom. So he's doing sort of the same thing. It's not exactly, but I want you to see the parallels. Next, back in chapter 1, when the Amalekite had been killed, David had ordered him killed because, after all, he had laid his hands upon the anointed one of God. He had killed Saul. At least he had said that he had killed Saul. And now, likewise, there's a killing. Abner is murdered at the hands of Joab. Well, back in chapter 1, David had lamented over Saul and Jonathan. He had sang that song of the bow of Jonathan and lamented, showing he was not pleased with that action. And here again, there is going to be a lament when we get to verse 33. You see, he had killed him back in verse 28. Afterward, when David heard of it, he said, "I and my kingdom are innocent before the Lord forever of the blood of Abner the son of Ner. May it fall on the head of Joab and all of his father's house." Now that's Joab is the nephew of David. But he's saying, "May it fall on the head of Joab and all of his father's house, and may there not fall from the house of Joab, one who has a discharge, who is a leper, who takes hold of a distaff, who fails by the sword, or who lacks bread. So Joab and Abishai, his brother, killed Abner. Notice Abishai is said to be sort of somehow involved in that. They killed Abner because he had put their brother Asahel to death in the battle of Gibeon, which we saw in the last chapter. Verse 31, then David said to Joab and to all the people who were with him, tear your clothes and gird on sackcloth and lament before Abner. And King David walked behind the bier, that is, as they're getting ready to, we would say the coffin, they're getting ready to bury him. Verse 32, thus they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king lifted up his voice and wept at the grave of Abner, and all the people wept. And the king chanted a lament, so here's the lament over Abner, and said, should Abner die as a fool dies? Now that's not being unkind to Abner, it's saying he was tricked. He wasn't, this wasn't part of a plan or anything. Your hands were not bound, nor your feet put in fetters. As one falls before the wicked, you have fallen. And so in the lament, he's calling Joab wicked because of what he had done. And all the people wept again over him. And then all the people came to persuade David to eat bread while it was still day. But David vowed, saying, may God so do to me, and more also, if I taste bread or anything else before the sun goes down. Notice he says, I won't eat bread until the sun has gone down because of this wrong. It reminds us of one who took his own body, represented later on by bread, and his own blood represented later on by wine, and said, now I want you to eat, I want you to drink in remembrance of me, because my death healed the breach. My death overcame the guilt. David is praying about Joab. May the guilt be upon him. Our greater David prays on our behalf and says, no, may their guilt be upon me. And I have settled that guilt by going to the cross, by dying the death they deserved, by rising again from the dead and showing that all has been forgiven.